us. Last November, we had an election, and Wisconsinites voted in that election, and they overcame significant challenges to exercise that fundamental right in the midst of a dangerous pandemic. They showed up at the polls with their masks on and pens in hand. They voted absentee, and they helped their neighbors exercise their right too. And just like every election before, they elected their legislators, and they elected the next president. And it turned out the way every election does. Someone won, someone lost. Unfortunately, the only thing that's different this time is that not everyone has been gracious in their defeat. But after canvasses and audits and court cases, one thing remains clear in Wisconsin: we held a fair, free, and secure election, and Joe Biden is our president. Yet since November 2020, we've watched Republican governors and legislators around our country work quickly to add more hurdles to voting, to discredit the good work of our election officials, and try and cast doubt on the election just because they didn't win. According to the state's United Democracy Center, Republicans have introduced more than 215 bills in 41 states to give legislators more power over election officials. Some of these bills were put together right here in Wisconsin, and ironically are supported by the same crew of folks who passed many of the election laws they're now trying to change. Think about that. In Wisconsin, we're no stranger to politicians trying to abuse their power to change election results they didn't like. We see it in our maps, some of the most gerrymandered in the nation. We see it in our photo ID requirement, a law we've had on books for the better part of a decade now. And we've seen it firsthand as all of this played out in costly litigation for years. In many ways, Wisconsin has been at the forefront of the national Republican efforts to override the will of the people. And now politicians in states across the country are abusing their power to try and overturn the election that we had just this last November. They're trying to stack the deck so that they get the results they want this time. They're trying to make it harder for every eligible person to cast their ballot. You know, Wisconsin has long been a laboratory of democracy, but in recent years, we are used as a petri dish for Republican plans to undermine that democracy. Well, not anymore, not today, not as long as I'm governor of the great state of Wisconsin. When I ran for this office, I pledged to work to protect the right of every eligible person to vote. And that's what I'm going to do here today. Today, I'll be vetoing 6 bills sent to my desk that would make it more difficult for eligible voters to cast their ballots in Wisconsin. And at the end of the day, these bills add unnecessary and damaging hurdles for Wisconsinites to participate in our democracy, from restricting how an absentee ballot can be returned and by who, to limiting municipalities' ability to organize community events, to help voters return ballots, to make burdensome changes to the use of indefinitely confined voter status. And in a lot of cases, these bills will make it even harder for older voters and voters with disabilities to cast their ballot. Folks who have a right to cast their ballot just like anybody else. We were reminded on January 6th again today, and each day that legislators work to enact legislation like this in other states, how precious our democracy is and how quickly it can be taken away. We are reminded that democracy isn't something that just happens for us. We choose to make it every day. That's why we will continue working to protect the right of every eligible voter to cast their ballot and to make sure it is easy and accessible for them to do that. And that includes using my veto pen to veto these bills before me today. And as I said before, as long as I'm governor of this great state, anti-democracy efforts like this will never see the light of day. Now, we've seen Republican governors across our country take action on these sorts of bills behind closed doors, in private, invite-only ceremonies. That's not my style. If an elected official is going to take action on sweeping changes to the cornerstone of our country, then we ought to have the courage to do it where the public and the free press can see it happening. And that's why I'll be vetoing these bills right here in the broad daylight of the Wisconsin State Capitol, the People's House. But before I do that, I want to introduce Jenny Newgart, who will talk a little bit about what these bills mean for her. Oops, I'll let you handle it.
Thank you. The Disability Vote Coalition would like to thank Governor Evers for protecting our freedom to vote by taking action today on voting bills that we have opposed. For our democracy to work, it must include all of us. These bad voting bills would significantly restrict the abilities of voters with disabilities, older adults, and many other Wisconsin voters from participating in the voting process. These bills would limit who can assist you with returning an absentee ballot, restrict workers in nursing homes and group homes from offering residents assistance with voting, put volunteers, clerks, and others at risk for prosecution for voting violations, and create new barriers for indefinitely confined voters and eliminate the option to be a permanent absentee voter. Voters with disabilities already have numerous barriers to voting, including lack of transportation, polling places that are inaccessible, complex medical conditions, difficulty obtaining photo ID, less access to technology and the internet, and more. Voting rights are the cornerstone of our democracy. We shouldn't have to fight to have equal and easy access to the fundamental right to vote that gives us all a say in our government. Over the past several months, the Disability Vote Coalition collected dozens of stories and surveyed over 400 people with disabilities and their allies who would be impacted by these bills. And we put together a new document called Voting Rights Are Human Rights in Our Own Voices, which you can find at our website, disabilityvote.org. Most of the people we talked to were afraid that they wouldn't be able to vote if these bills were passed, because they would dramatically increase the barriers they already experience, making it even harder, if not impossible, to vote. Most troubling is the punitive nature of many of these bills that's causing concern that caregivers and neighbors can't or won't be able to help people with disabilities vote. Andy Thane of Thorpe, Wisconsin relies on a complicated system of ever-changing caregivers to meet his daily living needs, including voting. Andy says, "It's going to dramatically reduce my options and make it more difficult to vote." Another voter said, "The message these bills sends is that maybe we just shouldn't vote because we're not capable of getting to the polls. That does not nullify our ability to vote. Our voice matters, and as a citizen, it's a privilege and a responsibility for me to vote." A common theme of these bills is that it will make absentee voting more difficult. Absentee voting is a lifeline for people with disabilities with transportation barriers and unpredictable medical conditions, and it will become more important as Wisconsin continues to age, leading to an even larger group of people who will be disenfranchised. We're talking about a significant number of Wisconsin's population. According to the American Association of People with Disabilities, approximately 23% of the electorate in the November election were individuals with some type of disability, including disabilities acquired through aging. The Disability Vote Coalition urges the legislature to work with us to advance bills that would make it easier for people with disabilities and older adults to vote, not harder. Thank you, Governor Evers, for taking action today to protect our freedom to vote and to ensure that every eligible voter can cast a ballot and that every ballot is counted.
All right, folks. All right, this is Senate Bill 203. Not approved. This is Senate Bill 204. Not approved. (205) Senate Bill. Not approved. There we go. Senate Bill 210, not approved. Senate Bill 212, not approved. And the final nail in the coffin. Senate Bill 292, not approved. Here we go, folks.
It's a great veto. Thank you very much, Governor.
Thank you.
Okay. Be glad to answer any questions. Yeah, and I apologize. I know you're talking about the recent subpoena. I didn't catch all the questions, so I'll just kind of address it. And if I don't answer the question, just holler at me again. The bottom line. Well, first of all, we don't know if the subpoenas are actually legal. There's some question about that. And second of all, we are in a position essentially to once again try to relitigate something that's been litigated many times across this country, hundreds, thousands of times across the country. But in addition, this particular subpoena just smacks at outrageous, making the process outrageously invisible. You think about that. I mean, all these machines are going to be taken at some place. You've seen what's going on in Arizona. It's a clown show, and there will be no transparency in Arkansas, Arizona. I know it's an A word. In Arizona, they're looking for bamboo in the ballots, and all this is happening essentially behind closed doors. People just can't, you'll be lucky to see it from a TV camera. But at the end of the day, it's a ridiculous effort to subject our democracy to a new low. And we can't afford that in our country. Hell no. No. My advice to them will get legal counsel, and this will likely end up in court. But no, and I'm sure they're not thinking of packing up all their election machines and saying, hey, where do you live, Michelle? We'll take it to your house. Yes, the answer would be hell no. Yeah, we're making progress, but we're not to the point now where we can make a decision. I'm thinking early next week will be that time. We're looking at all options, including the one that you mentioned. Not at this time. We're trying to figure out how we're going to collect that information to begin with. Because people can get their shots in a whole bunch of different ways, because people maybe have not kept their documentation, no matter depending on where they got the shot. And so making sure that if we collect information, if that information is going to be accurate, how do we determine its accuracy, things like that. So we're learning from others as we get there, but I anticipate we'll be making a decision early next week. That's the core of what we're dealing with here. Absolutely, there are people that are talking to these legislators because these legislators have cast doubt on it. It begins with the people that are making the noise about this. Republican legislators have made noise about this since the days before the election in last November, and they've convinced a number of their constituents that there is a problem. And when Bill Barr, Attorney General of the United States, confidant of Donald Trump, says this was a fair election, one of the fairest there has been, and instead of responding, well, we gave it a good old try, we'll do better next time, it became a thing. Republican legislators started stirring the pot. Of course, their constituents are going to say, well, what's up with that? And so now it's time for those that have stirred the pot to say, there's nothing there. We've seen it happen. Obviously, they're not going to do that. And so convincing, having Michelle take over the voting machines of 2 counties, I don't think is going to change their mind one way or the other, frankly. People need to understand that this election's over. I had a very close election with Governor Scott Walker. He conceded. There's all sorts of opportunities for people to say, I was wrong, let's move on. But apparently it's too important to jazz things up for the next election. That's really unfortunate for the people of the state, and that's why I'm so happy to veto these bills. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.